You may remember the recent video I did about the best plugins for OpenRCT2. Well, the plugin that earned the #1 spot in the list has just gotten even better. Sadret's Scenery Manager has just been released with brand new version 2.0. With the new save format's imminent release, Sadret has been hard at work getting this plugin compatible with the game's new features. In addition to that, the new plugin also includes a few new abilities that make it even more powerful. In this video, I'll explain all of the features of the plugin, both old and new, and we'll explore some of the cool things we can do. To get started, download the plugin from one of the links in this video's description and put the JS file in your plugin directory. Once you're in a game, you can find the plugin by selecting it from the menu under the map button. You can also open it with the default shortcut key of W. We'll talk more about shortcut keys later on in the video. An important note before we continue. This plugin is not going to be compatible with templates that were created using the old version. So if you've used this plugin before and are updating for the first time, be aware that you might lose your old data. This data is stored in the plugins.store.json file in your OpenRCT2 directory. If you're concerned about losing templates, it's a good idea to back up this file. The plugin's first tab is for its mainline feature, copying and pasting large amounts of game objects. There are a lot of widgets in this window, but their usage is easier than it looks, and I'll explain them as we go. To best explain how it works, let's start with an example. Let's say I have a map here with some scenery laid down. I really like this building, and I'd like to make a copy of it and put that copy on another place on the map. I start by hitting the Select button. Now I can click and drag an area of the map that contains the objects I'm interested in. After selecting an area, I click Copy. The plugin copies the scenery and automatically switches to paste mode. Now I have a placement tool that contains all the objects in that area. If I now click another part of the map, that scenery will be applied, just like if I were using the game's built-in scenery tool. If we want to move some objects instead of copying them, we can use the Cut button instead of Copy. This will remove the pieces we select. Just be careful that you aren't removing footpaths or track that are currently in use. The rest of this window allows us to tweak the behavior of the copy-paste tool. For example, we can use the filtering options on the right side of the window if we want to exclude certain types of objects. For instance, if we want to copy a building around a ride, but don't want to copy that ride's track or queue, we can unselect track and footpath to ignore those object types. We can also use the options on the left to alter how the tool pastes what we've copied, altering the orientation with rotation or mirroring, adjusting the height, and so on. One other important option to explain here is Place Mode, which has two options, Safe and Raw. This option affects how the plugin places objects from the game's point of view. With the Safe Mode, the plugin uses normal game actions to place scenery, which means that it acts just like if you had used the game's built-in Scenery Manager. It will check for collisions with existing objects, and you'll be charged money for the objects you place. With Raw Mode, the plugin will manipulate the map data directly, sort of like if you were using the Tile Inspector. You can get more exact copy and paste behavior this way, but it won't do any validation against the terrain or other scenery, and it won't work in multiplayer. In general, you'll probably usually want to use Safe Mode, but Raw can be useful in certain circumstances. You can also save templates of scenery you copy to use later, even in other parks. After making a selection, click Save and give your template a name. The Scenery Manager can then load that saved template in any other park. If you wind up with a lot of saved templates, the second tab has some tools for organizing them. You can rename and delete existing templates, and you can even organize them into folders for more clarity. In addition to copying pre-existing scenery, the plugin also contains several tools for quickly laying down fresh new scenery too. The Scatter brush can let you throw down scenery at random. Unlike OpenRCT2's built-in Scatter tool, which only lets you place one type of scenery at a time, this tool lets you select from a lot more options. Let's start by picking which scenery we want to place. Clicking the Pick button allows us to select a type of scenery from the map. After we've added some scenery to our selection, use the plus and minus buttons to indicate how densely we want each type of scenery to be represented with our brush. Finally, we can click Activate Brush to start using the Scatter tool. We can set the size and shape of our brush here too. Like with the Copy-Paste tool, you can also save Scatter brush templates to use later. Like the Scatter tool, the Bench tool will automatically place path additions like benches and bins on our footpaths. First, we can change the pattern size option to indicate how frequently we want the objects to be created. With a pattern size of 1, an object will be placed on each tile. If we add more slots but leave them empty, the objects will be more spaced out. Then simply use the pick button to select which elements we want included, and click Activate Brush to start placing path objects. Note that this brush won't replace existing path additions. You can see a preview of the results if you have the Show Ghost option enabled, which should be on by default. If you're interested in a comprehensive list of all the scenery you've used on your map, the Object List can scan the park and count each object it finds. Start by clicking Scan Map. After the map has been scanned, you can filter and sort the results to find which objects you've used and how many there are. Clicking and entering the list will give you some more details about that object and also allow you to jump to the next instance of that object on the map itself. You can also scan a subset of the map instead of the whole thing by clicking Scan Area and then selecting just the area which you are interested in. Another new powerful feature of the Scenery Manager is the Search and Replace tab. Here you can scan your map for all instances of a particular object and delete them or swap them with a different object. For example, I can use the pick tool in the Search For section to replace this particular tree. Next, I pick a second tree type in the Replace With section. Now, clicking Search and Replace will turn all instances of the first tree into the second. This also works with paths, walls, and fences. You can also set some options like the color of the new objects. The Configuration tab allows you to change certain settings which apply to several of the previous tools we've discussed. I won't go into detail about them here, but as always I encourage you to play around with these settings and see what they do. Finally, the last two tabs are information about the plugin, its recent changes, and developer information. The Scenery Manager also comes with a lot of shortcut keys enabled by default, which will be very helpful if you find yourself doing a lot of the same actions repeatedly. The shortcut keys can be found by going to the Options menu, then the Controls and Interface tab, clicking Shortcut Keys, then going to the last tab in the Shortcut Keys window. All of the entries here that start with SM are relevant to the plugin. As I mentioned earlier, there is the handy W shortcut for opening the Scenery plugin's main window. But in addition to that, these shortcuts work without the plugin window being open at all, and you can do anything on the first tab entirely with shortcuts. For example, I can quickly use Ctrl-A to select an area, and Ctrl-C to copy. Now the paste tool is immediately available for me to paste my selection, all with using just shortcut keys and without opening the plugin window. Other handy shortcut keys are Control and the number keys to toggle the inclusion of each scenery type. That should give you a nice overview of everything the Scenery plugin can do. I didn't go over every single detail and option in it, there's still a lot of finer details to explore. You can read the extensive documentation on the plugin's GitHub repository, which should be able to fill in any gaps. You can download the Scenery Manager from GitHub or the OpenRCT2 plugin repository. I've included links to both in the description below. You can also use the GitHub repo to submit bug reports and suggestions for new features and enhancements. Or if you just like to support Sadret to show thanks for all the hard work that's gone into making this fantastic tool, there's a link for that as well. I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching.